guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell, we are doing my October wrap up. I really wanted to film, honestly, my October wrap up last week, but it was coming back from vacation, getting ready to go to work, all of that stuff, unpacking on Sunday, so I didn't get to sit down and finish, and I feel like a total asshole for that because I feel a lot of pressure to put out videos when other people put out videos, but I know a lot of my viewership comes later, so it doesn't necessarily matter when I upload stuff, and I'm trying to kind of take my pressure off of that. Also, I'm gonna try to make this video shorter, but I read a lot of books in October. Let me know if you can relate. I feel like October for me is sort of the month where I read the most, like hands down. It is the coziest month. So it is the month that I take the most time to like be cozy, be inside, be reading a lot. Let me know if you can relate. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started because I do still have a lot of books to talk about. A couple of them are going to be books that I actually finished at the very end of August when I filmed my wrap up. In trying to be on track with everybody else's wrap ups going up, I did finish 2 other books the last couple of days of August, so I'm going to include those as well. First one I want to talk about is Well Played by Jen DeLuca. This follows our main character Stacy. If you read Well Met, because this is the sequel to Well Met, you were introduced to Stacy briefly. She is the bar wench the main character from the first one works with at the Renaissance Festival. So she is kind of rethinking her life. The book starts off with the end of that year's Renaissance Festival, and there's a man that she sort of has a casual relationship with. She gets really shit-faced one night and decides to send him a message. Well, she doesn't realize that she actually sent it to their public Facebook. You find out later through their relationship, because the beginning of the book, the first 40% is them texting back and forth. You find out it's not actually the person that she thinks she's texting. And then the second half of the book is her meeting him and trying to work things out. Now, issues I had with this book, some of the plot devices, because typically in romance it follows a formula. So you know they're gonna meet and there's gonna be some kind of problem, they're gonna work through it, there's gonna be a happy ending. You can pretty much all the time expect that to happen. If you know of any examples where the formula is a bit different, especially in an indie romance, let me know down below. I'm really looking for indie romance recommendations. But the things that sort of happen in this book to kind of follow the general formula were really weird. And I don't want to give away kind of what they are, but a lot of it felt like forced, you know, like forced problems for the sake of the story. They didn't really fit to the characters a whole lot. Kind of bugged me, but that was really the only thing about it I didn't like, aside from bits of issues with the pacing. I feel like Stacy and the fact that she is trying to do better for herself and trying to figure out where she really wants to go, what she wants to do, I really enjoyed that. I like the juxtaposition because the first book, the main character, when she moves to town, really likes the small town vibe. Stacy in this book doesn't. She wants to get out and wants to experience things, but her mom had, she has like some medical stuff that happens and something really traumatic happened the last time Stacy left, so she's afraid to leave. I feel like this story was really sweet, was really, you know, had that October cozy autumnal vibes that all of us basic bitches enjoy, but unfortunately there was just a couple things I didn't love as much as I loved in the first one. I feel like it could have been slightly more fleshed out. I feel like the romance was okay, but not necessarily my favorite. I definitely like our main characters from the first one a lot more. I know there's going to be a third one, and it follows April, who's our main character, whose name I cannot remember right now. I'm really sorry. Emily, that was her name, sorry. It's her sister in the third one, and I'd be really excited. I'm super excited to read that one. I think this might be a series where the first one was really strong, the second one's kind of meh, and the third one's going to be really good. Excited to see though, because I really do like the series. I like the setting. I like the characters a lot. So we'll see what I end up thinking about it. But this one was a little bit of a letdown to me. Not the worst book. I gave it 4 stars, but definitely not what I wanted it to be considering how great I thought the other one was. The next book that I read that I did talk about in a vlog a little bit is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory, as well as our main character Alexa and our main character Drew. This does have some dual perspectives throughout the book, but primarily it focuses on Alexa. And like her story overall, she works in politics. She does work for the governor or the mayor. I can never remember which one's which. Please don't come at me. The reason why I really like this book is I liked Alexa as a character. I thought Alexa was very strong, but very raw, very real. Issues that I had with this book is the miscommunication between the characters, because the plot was a little bit strange to me. As a woman in 2020, I don't see this happening at all for anyone. Basically, Alexa and Drew meet in an elevator. They're in an elevator that stops working. Drew and her get to talking. He sort of explains to her, you know, I'm going to a wedding that is my ex-girlfriend's wedding to one of my best friends, and he somehow ropes her into being his wedding date. I think that's really strange. I think that's very unrealistic, and I'm somebody who reads romance, so I know the romance plot is always kind of unrealistic, but this one for me seemed very, very off. My red flags were like, he's going to take you home into his basement and kill you after this wedding. It was very weird to me. Gave me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but surprisingly though, Drew doesn't actually end up being a serial killer. He ends up actually getting her to go to the wedding with him. Sorry for that very weird cut. I choked on my own spit. Anyway, so Alexa does end up going to the wedding with him. And another thing that I kind of struggled with this story is I felt like Alexa did have some insecurities, which I think is normal, but one of the biggest things I think that is born of that is that her communication skills are awful. So throughout the story, there's a lot of things that if she just opened her mouth or if Drew just opened his mouth, they would be resolved. Like there's ex-girlfriends at the wedding, there is a lot of her feeling insecure about some of the other women there, which I felt was like more realistic, but instead of telling him about how she's feeling, she just sort of hides it, blows it off. It's another one of those romance novels where the drama in the book was completely unnecessary. There's a lot of ups and downs with the characters that I did not enjoy at all. Like I said, via the plot, it just didn't make sense. It felt very disjointed. A lot of the dialogue between the characters was very weird to me. It is a romance novel. There's sex in it. If you're looking for that, I think you'll enjoy it. I think that part of the book was really good. But for me, I need strong characters. I need a strong plot. And it just felt like they weren't really fleshed out, and they were very odd. And like I said, very disjointed. And it's hard to care about the story when you don't care about the characters. I'm definitely one of those people. If you're not, I understand you might really like this book, but the plot was weird, the characters were weird, like especially with Alexa, like me really enjoying her when she's just by herself or with her sister in the story, as opposed to how she interacts with Drew. So it was a very strange book. If you've read the other ones, let me know if they get better, because I love romance novels where they are about, you know, a set of characters, and then the ones that follow are about offshoot characters, like secondary characters in the first novel. And I know the second one is about two characters that I'm really actually kind of interested in following. So let me know if you read the second one and if you did enjoy it, if it's worth continuing for me. I gave this book 3 stars, so not the worst book I ever read, but definitely not my top favorites of the romance genre. The next book I read took me like a month and a half, and I'm so disappointed. I actually gave away my copies of them, and it would be Aurora Burning. So this book, I don't want to give away too much of what the first one is about, because the second one picks up in a place where I feel like it would give a lot of spoilers for the first book. So what I'm going to talk about is basically what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. What I enjoyed of the second book is a lot of the characters, a lot of reoccurring characters from the first one, especially Tyler. Tyler is my favorite character now of the book or of the series, because he is funny, he's sassy, he seems well developed to me. He has a good backstory. The actions that he does make sense to the way that he was raised, or, you know, the fact that he changes his mind about certain things throughout the series. It makes sense with him, and also with his sister and the secondary characters. Now, the issue that I have with this book is I, as you can tell, read a lot of romance. The romance in this novel is just shoved in your face the entire time, and it's very awkward. I don't necessarily want to talk about who the characters are, but if you've read it, you understand. If you've read the first one, you might know, but I don't want to say names because I don't really want to give away a lot of the plot. But for me, it was very cringy. It was very alpha. It was very, it wasn't developed enough, I don't feel like, to the extent that it was in the second book. Like the amount of it that we got to see in the second book, I don't feel like the first one really lent like a hand to developing that at all. And it's pretty much immediate from the beginning of the second book, and I'm so let down. It's like night and day, because Aurora Rising was so good. You guys know it was one of my favorite books last year, and reading Aurora Burning, I was just like, this doesn't even seem like it's written by the same authors. And for me, I don't know if it's because it is a dual author, you know, duo that is writing this. I don't know who's writing what. I think a lot of the sassy, funny characters probably comes from Jay, but I, unfortunately, am probably not going to read anything else from Jay or Amy, because I'm kind of outgrowing them a little bit, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but just that I feel like their characters tend to be very similar. So with the Illuminate Files, the characters and the story are very similar to that. I need something a little bit newer, a little bit more ingenuitive in what they're normally writing. Like, I'm not saying I need something completely new that no one's ever written before, but I need something different for them. And I'm getting basically just carbon copies of what they've already written, and I'm really sad about it. So like I said, this one I did give 2 stars. Not my favorite. It probably is going to be one of my most disappointing books of the year, unfortunately. The next book I read, I'm not going to linger here for too long. I read A Court of Frost and Starlight. I gave it 3 stars. I think when I originally read it, I gave it 1 star. I can't really talk about it if you haven't read the rest of the series, but what I will say is reading it at this time of the year definitely lent me to like the story a lot more. It does take place in winter. It's supposed to be around Christmas time. When it originally released, it released in the middle of the summer. I don't know why the fuck they did that, but reading it now, I definitely liked it a lot more. I think because I read the, you know, ACOTAR, all of that, right before, I was still very invested. I still very much so cared about the characters. When I originally read it, I, you know, read the last one, ACOWAR, and then waited a while, and then read A Court of Frost and Starlight. So I was really missing out on some stuff, and I wasn't as invested or connected to the story anymore, but I can see why people really enjoy it. To me, however, it was very short. It was very fan-fiction-y. It was very disjointed. The characters didn't really feel like themselves. There was a couple of really forced things in the story as well that didn't really make sense to me. So it just seemed like pandering, like a lot of it was pandering to her audience and trying to get something out. It felt like, to me, this should have been bigger. It should have added more story because it's supposed to link, you know, the first series that she did to what is going to come after, and I don't really feel like there will be that much of a connection. We'll see. There is a little bit of character development, but not anything that I'm super excited about. Now, let's talk about my favorite book of the month, and that would be House of Earth and Blood, which is Crescent City #1. I'm gonna go, it's so hard to talk about what the plot of this book is without really spoiling it. I think I did it really well in a vlog at one point, but I don't know the best way to say this. Basically, it follows our main character, whose name is Bryce. I always forget her name for some reason. Bryce lives in what could be considered, I would say, like a futuristic New York, like a supernatural futuristic New York. There are angels, demons, there are vampires, there are werewolves, there are, you know, just every mythological being that you could expect. And Bryce is half fae. So in this book, she gets roped into helping the angel police, which I never thought that would come out of my mouth, but she gets roped into helping the angel police to solve a string of murders that she herself is personally invested in, which I would like to speak to somebody's manager because no one prepared me for the first 50 pages of this book. There's something that very traumatic that happens within the first 50 pages that I never saw coming, and I immediately was like, this is very different from what I would expect from a Sarah J. Maas book. It's very heart-wrenching. Most of the novel's pretty heart-wrenching. Some of the things that I like outside of the basic plot, because I also thought that was really cool. I like Bryce as a character. She's sassy, she's funny, she's, you know, some of my very favorites. She also has like her own insecurities. There is a lot of discussion of post-traumatic stress, which isn't necessarily addressed by name, but you can tell. There's a lot of anxiety, depression, trigger warnings for suicide and things like that in it. But I really liked that was addressed. I think that is very realistic. When something so traumatic happens to characters, you do have those side effects. And I feel like a lot of the time people are like, oh, they pick up the pieces and they move on. And it's not like that. Bryce really struggles with trust issues, with moving on, those kinds of things throughout the book. And I love that. It was one of my favorite parts of the book. Another thing that I really liked about it is overall, for me, the story wasn't so complex that I couldn't necessarily follow it. I know that's a bit weird, but if you own this book, if you've thought about reading this book, it is gigantic and there is so much backstory, so much world, so many characters. And this book, for me, I gave it a 4.5 because it is very lengthy, and a lot of the beginning of the book is quite a bit of an info dump because there's a lot of setup that you need to have, a setup that you need to develop to move on into what I think is going to be a big series with bigger books or about the same size books. So I appreciated that because it was easy to understand. And throughout the book, there are points times where it is reiterated kind of the hierarchy of everything, who is kind of who controls what within the city that they live in. I liked that. I like the romance in this a lot. It does get it's sort of like beating a dead horse towards the end of the book, but it was still really enjoyable. I didn't see the ending coming at all. I didn't see some of the betrayals coming. I didn't see some of the deaths coming. This book fucked me up, but it is really one of my favorites. If you have read a Sarah book before and you don't really like the whole alpha male thing or the like my mate, my partner, you know, whatever kind of vibe, that does come through in this book. I don't really mind. That stuff doesn't really bother me. I could see it grating though, because it is quite repetitive, just like it was in, you know, ACOTAR or whatever. So if you're not a fan of that, you probably wouldn't really enjoy that if that's something, because people either don't mind it, or really hate it. There isn't anybody that's like, I'm a fan. It's either you just don't care or it really bugs you. So depending what camp you're in, that might be a reason why you don't like it. But I do think it was very different from, you know, her original series. And I like that a lot because it's very, for me, it's dark and gritty, and I was really looking for something like that. It is an adult series. I know ACOTAR is, you know, marketed as YA, even though it's not. But this one was definitely more adult, I think, in my mind. There's like drugs and partying and, you know, just like I said, PTSD, everything in this book that I think does appeal to a more mature audience. But that's not to say younger kids can't enjoy it, but just be wary of some of the, you know, stuff that actually happens in the book. The next book that I have to talk about is one that you guys should have already told me I was going to love and no one did, and it would be Tweet Cute. This book was adorable. Basically, it follows our main character, Pepper, and her classmate named Jack. The story between them is Pepper runs her family's like Burger King is what you would think of them, but they're called Big League Burger. She runs their Twitter. Jack runs his family's Deli's Twitter as well. They get kind of embroiled in a Twitter war. They do find out later who each other are, and they sort of agree to kind of work together to continue to get Jack's family a little bit more notoriety on Twitter, and then eventually they're going to settle it and be done with it. But the reason why this story gets really interesting is because there is something whose name I cannot remember. It is like an app where kids from her school and his school can come together and kind of talk. And the reason why it's impressive is because it's anonymous, so you don't know who is who. So you're developing these friendships and these bonds with people, but you don't necessarily know who they are. And then occasionally it will, you know, get rid of your anonymity and then people are able to meet. And I really like that. So it fosters developing real relationships without really knowing who somebody is, which is a problem at their school because there's a bit of a hierarchy. Kids there tend to be very intelligent, very greedy, very like rich kid. So I liked that as well. So there's essentially two storylines happening. The Jack and Pepper storyline that they are aware of when it comes to their family's businesses, and then the Jack and Pepper storyline with them kind of talking in the app and sort of developing feelings for each other. And it's funny because Pepper and Jack in real life don't really like each other a whole lot. They eventually do sort of have a friendship, but you don't really get like this sense of like longing like you do when they're talking on the Weasel app. That's what it is called. But I really like this story. I think that it was fun, a little bit imaginative. Obviously something like this probably wouldn't happen. I don't think Pepper would necessarily be running her like this Big League Burger Twitter, considering how many followers they have. Jack's side of that does sort of make more sense, but I thought the relationships were cute. I thought the characters were fun. Overall, I really enjoyed the story. It was something that I needed at the time. And that's not to say that it's not necessarily good, that I just enjoyed it because I needed something. I thought like overall it was a really, really fun story. And if you haven't read it, I would recommend it. Like I said, I got mine from the library, so I imagine you'll be able to find it at yours, but it was just a lot of fun and I just haven't really heard anybody talk about it and I don't necessarily know why. So if you've read it, let me know down below what you thought of it. Let's talk about the hot trash fire that was Love Her or Lose Her. If you're a fan of these books, I don't want to hear why you're a fan of these books. You're not going to convince me. This is from the Hot and Hammered series. This is book number 2. As well as our main character, Rosie and Dominic. Now, y'all, I like books. Let me just give you the plot of this book. Basically, Rosie decides she's going to leave Dominic. Dominic is a vet, a military veteran, so he is, you know, back from the war. He's been deployed, you know, he's had this military career. He is very reserved. He has trouble communicating to her how he's feeling, sort of what he's going through. And she doesn't like that, which I can understand. If you are with somebody who doesn't kind of want to open up, doesn't want to really take care of themselves, doesn't really want to, you know, really take care of you, I could get that. So they have a very sexual relationship. So the same day, every day of the week, they come home and fuck like rabbits. Now, I understand kind of where she's coming from. Like she has that, they emphasize this so much in the book. They have such an electric like relationship when it comes to sex. But other than that, they're just crumbling. I did kind of like that in a way, but it also kind of bugged me because it just set the story up to be really weird. Dom is very domineering, very aggressive, very like, I take care of my woman, like, no one's gonna talk to, it was so fucking cringy. It was so uncomfortable. I like a strong man who will tell people to fuck off if they talk to their lady, like not just talk to them, but like, hit on them or whatever if their woman doesn't, isn't able to get them to go away. I don't mind that in a storyline, but Dom seemed like he treated Rosie like fucking property. And get this, so they decide to go to therapy, which I thought that was the only part of the book that I thought was hilarious, because their therapist, Rosie specifically goes to a quack therapist to get Dom to like call off like going to therapy, because she said, I'll stay with you, we'll work through it. If you agree to go to therapy, we'll kind of see how things work out. So she tries to pick the most outrageous one so that he won't do it, which was the only part of the story that I was like, this is funny, because the rest of it, like I said, is just, it's them going to therapy and trying to do the things that the therapist says. They have 4 sessions, which I'm sorry, you can't save your marriage in 4 fucking sessions. If your husband has deep-rooted issues coming home and clearly has post-traumatic stress disorder, he's not just gonna get over that with fucking couples therapy. He needs to be in his own therapy. He needs to be talking to people. He needs to be in like support groups. So for me, it was so unrealistic. And this book, good God. So it seemed to me like the author has a fantasy, right? It's a little bit more domineering. It's a little bit dirty, kind of sexy vibes, but she executed it really badly, like really, really badly. It seemed like really poorly written fan fiction. Like it seemed like 50 Shades of Grey fanfic to me. Like the way that their relationship was, I just fucking hated it. And I didn't like them together. I didn't like that Rosie was completely undervalued and underappreciated, and not in a sense that Dom doesn't appreciate her, doesn't, love her, but he doesn't communicate that, and that is sort of a plot device. Like for me, if he does struggle with these things and he's unable to communicate because of his post-traumatic stress, let's draw attention to that. Like, let's focus on that. Like, let's not be like, oh, the relationship will fix that. That really, like, as a child of military veterans, as an ex-spouse of a military veteran, like, it really bugged me. It was so unrealistic. There was so much research that I feel like this author could have done, and so the way this book could have gone, and the way that it did, I hated it. Because like I said earlier, in romance, there's always like they meet, or, they're in a relationship, there's a problem, they work it out happily ever after. Obviously, that's how this book ends. But the issue that they had, I wanted to reach through the book and strangle Rosie. I was so upset. This book just was not for me. I'm not going to be reading the 3rd one. I felt very similarly to the characters from the original one. I don't like the men in these novels. I feel like that's really important. I feel like there are a lot of things about this book that could be really harmful to readers. I didn't like it at all. If you like this book, like, I am so glad that you did. Like, obviously I want people to like these books, but and I know these are wildly popular, but for me, this was just a hard nope. I was sending people like passages because they were like, what do you mean? Like, what parts? And I was sending that to them, and it's like some of the stuff was just so fucking cringy. I gotta move on because I have so many more to talk about. The next book that I have to talk about, very briefly, I'm gonna go over this because this is number 7 in a series. I fucking finished Kingdom of Ash. I did it. I finally finished it, and I bawled my eyes out like a goddamn baby. This book bugged me in the sense that a lot of characters lived. There wasn't a whole lot of death in this. It kind of bugged me. I feel like Sarah's the series, like, gotta wrap it up in a way that there is loss, that there is mourning, that there is moving on, that kind of stuff. But she doesn't really do that. She's kind of just like, all right, everybody leaves. So I didn't really enjoy that. But another thing that I didn't like about this book, which I'm really sad about, is going back to Aelin and Rowan's relationship. I don't know why, but I don't like Aelin in this book, and that's really sad because she is one of my favorite characters from books before, and I don't know if it's one of those things, or if I read the entire series again, or if I had, been reading them in concession, that I would have enjoyed it, but Aelin just seemed very off to me in this book, which once again speaks to kind of post-traumatic stress because of what happens to her in this book, but it was just very meh. It was like very middle of the road. I gave it 5 stars though because I'm an idiot, but this is one of those series that I will forever love. It is my favorite out of everything that Sarah has written. I feel like the characters are really dynamic. I like the overall plot. you know, whatever. She may write the second book in Crescent City and that'll be my new favorite series, but to me, I am just such a fucking fangirl of this series that I couldn't give it anything less than 5 stars, because my overall enjoyment of the book, like as a whole, and of the series as a whole, and of this as the ending of this massive fucking series that I've dedicated 3 years of my life to, I had to give it 5 stars because it was a wild ride through and through. And I think the overall ending and the way she did wrap things up, it feels very whole to me. It feels very complete. And to me, I had so much fun reading it. Like it took me forever to read it because like once I finally sat down and finished it, it was a really quick read, but I think I was so afraid to see the ending and afraid to see kind of what would happen, but it did do really well in my book and I did really, really enjoy it. So the next book I have to talk about is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. This is the second one. This follows Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This is Chloe's sister if you've read the first one. Not gonna go into too many spoilers, but basically, Dani is in school. She's studying to be, I believe, a professor or something. She has a very intimidating job. Like she has the job that I think, or like what she's aspiring to be that I wanted to be when I was much younger, but I've since realized that I'm weak and could never do that. She is very detached. She has been scorned in the past and believes that love is not as important as just sex and getting like your needs met in that kind of way, or having like a relationship but not that kind of relationship, you know what I mean? Like casually dating, like what all the modern ladies are doing, which more power to you. I think it's fucking fantastic. I loved her as a character. She's headstrong. She knows what she wants. She is very like, these are my needs. She's very blunt. She's very honest. There was not a whole lot of miscommunication in this book, which is one of my least favorite things in romance, is when people don't open their mouths. There's a natural progression between her and Zaf and kind of their relationship. Basically, she prays to her goddess and asks for a fuck buddy, and she gets Zaf. And the reason why I love this book so much is Zaf. Like, I love Dani with all of my little black heart, but Zaf has a special place because he struggles with PTSD and because his family has suffered a very traumatic loss, and he used to be a rugby player and he's kind of followed around in the media when this accident happens. He also has severe anxiety. Like, I died over Zaf. He is a cuddly teddy bear, but also could kill a man. Like, I love Zaf and I love their relationship. I love that she was patient and understanding and didn't try to do the most when it came to him and his anxiety. Like, you see that throughout the book. Fucking love that. I love the sex. I love the tension. I love them. Like, they are, to me, like goals when it comes to romance books. I think they had the perfect relationship. It's not without struggles. It's not without, you know, certain things happening throughout the book, but I love this book more than I liked Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and I fucking loved that book. So if you haven't read this one, if you've read the first one, we're kind of meh about it, if either of these characters sound up your alley, read it, because it was fantastic. It was an absolute fucking masterpiece in my eyes, and Zaf is just a perfect fit for Dani, and Dani's a perfect fit for him. I think they were a very, very good couple, and I will say that Talia writes some fantastic relationships. Like, her characters are very different to each other, and they make it work, and they make it work in a way that there's something to be learned from it, and I really, really appreciated this one. The next one that I read is actually a graphic novel, and it's in real life, and this is about a young girl who kind of gets into gaming, like online gaming, think World of Warcraft, because a woman comes to her school and says, hey, we want more girls to play these games, or, you know, if you guys do, you'll get like a subscription, and then eventually you'll get to join our guild. Now, while she starts to play the game, she meets up with another in-game character who is killing people in-game that are money farmers, because if you've never played like an MMORPG, there are people predominantly, supposedly, from like China, Japan, who go in and farm certain items or certain you know, like armor or mythical things within the game itself, and they sell them online. It's completely legal. I've seen it done in many games, like when I play Sweater or anything like that, like, or Elder Scrolls, people do that. So it's not necessarily completely legal, but it's kind of permissible. So in this book, she actually meets one of the farmers, and it is a young man who lives in China. And it struggles with a lot of privilege, like the definitely very, very different characters, very, very different, completely different sides of the world. Like, you get to hear the main character talk about, like, well, why don't you have health insurance, or maybe you should go to your employer, and the boy just is like, what the fuck do you want me to do? I love this book. I think it is important. I actually borrowed this from the library, but I ended up buying it. My copy hasn't come in yet because I ordered it from my local bookstore, but I thought the message of this book was fantastic. I really, really, truly did. If you are looking for, you know, kind of like that fantastical video gamey kind of vibe, but with a very, very important message, like a very, very important message about privilege, I think you need to read this. It was fantastic. I don't know why more people haven't talked about it because I absolutely fucking loved it. I have read a lot of books this month that I think people are waiting for my opinion on. This is the one I'm most nervous to talk about. It's The House in the Cerulean Sea. I didn't love this book. I gave it 4 stars. One of those stars was purely because of the representation and the message of it. I thought it was fucking fantastic in that way. But Linus is our main character. He works for a company whose name I cannot remember, there are magical children that are in these orphanages that he has to go to make sure that they are being treated respectfully, or else the orphanage is shut down and then the kids are kind of transferred to this school. That is his job. The company that he works for, awful, 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 awful. Definitely very realistic to how certain companies do work or how, you know, like those kinds of things are run. But Linus is assigned to this very small island. It's very cut off from everybody for a very good reason. Apparently the children that are there are more high risk. I don't want to give away kind of who they are, but that is the basis of the book. So the whole book follows him following these children around, talking to, you know, the man that kind of runs everything and like everybody's backstories. The reason why I like this book, because I'm really going to focus on what I liked. What I didn't like is basically I didn't like the writing style. It seemed very, you know, this happened, this happened, this happened. I didn't like the dialogue, but for me, the rep in this book is fantastic. Our main character is gay. First off, let's start with that. And they're older gentlemen too, which you never fucking see. The overall story of nature versus nurture, because obviously these kids are a little bit more what you would consider at risk. They are born and bred basically to be fucking evil, and the man who runs it is like, you know, they're still just children, like nature versus nurture. That whole discussion for me was both good and great and terrible because for me, I struggle a lot with like the type of person I am, and I think a lot of us do in political climate. So for me, I think it maybe just wasn't the right time for me to be reading this book because it made me think more about like the type of person I am. And while I think we should be thinking about that, I'm like overwhelmed with that right now, and you can only change so much as a person or do so much as a person. And I know a lot of people are feeling like that right now. So it's a little bit overwhelming to me. If I'd have read it 6 months ago, if I, you know, maybe read it next year, I would probably like it a whole lot more, but I didn't enjoy reading it as much as I wanted to. But there's so many wonderful, beautiful things in this book. I did cry. It was a very sad book, and I think a lot of people really felt like that. It was very easy to read. It was very calm and very, you know, just, it was very cozy. It's a very cozy book despite like some of the, you know, like some of the things that happen in it or some of the things that are talked about in it. I understand why people like it. I truly, truly do. And it, like I said, it's not that I disliked it. I gave it 4 stars. Technically, I would have given it 3.5. Not my least favorite, not my absolute favorite, not a bad book at all though. If you're interested in reading it, I don't know a single person that hasn't enjoyed it. I'm probably the only person that I know of that wasn't like fucking head over heels in love with it. It is a book that I plan on purchasing. And it is a book that I plan on rereading because I do want to come back and look at this at a later time because I want to know sort of why, you know, maybe, like I said, if it's just the time that I read it, maybe like a little bit more later, kind of thing. I was really hesitant to even rate this on Goodreads, and not because of pressure, but because you ever read a book and you're like, I know that I would love this. Like, what's going on with me? Why am I not head over heels in love with this book? Like, not even considering other people's reviews. That's kind of where I'm at. So I do want to come back a little bit later and take another look at it, take another read, possibly do like a buddy read with somebody or something to give myself a lot of time to actually like process and think about everything that the book is about. So those are all the books that I read in October. I'm sorry this video is once again forever fucking long. I don't know how to stop doing that, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video.